Hi everyone. For today's video, I wanted to do something a little fun. I just got done writing a pretty big section for the manuscript of my next book, and I wanted to take a day off and organize all of the work that I've done on Metroidvania into one space that people can access. And I've done this in the past a little bit, but this is me doing it again after having written my master's thesis, my PhD, and a lot of essays after that. And the way that I did it here is I compiled it onto my old blog, which is meant to be more accessible to a larger audience. So even though it's on my website, that website is 18 and up, whereas this old blog is intended for more like a general audience. So what I thought I would do is read that and then maybe talk about it a little bit afterwards. And it's pretty straightforward. It just, from master's to PhD and beyond, my entire work on Metroidvania. What you get is what you see. And yeah, so I thought I'd just read that from top to bottom real quick. It's not super long, but it does sort of compile everything into one place. And yeah, so I'll read that first, and then if anything occurs to me afterwards, we can kind of talk about that a little bit too. So yeah, here we go. Persephone van der Waard is a leading expert on Metroidvania, having researched the genre aggressively since 2017. From her master's, postgrad, and PhD material, this page highlights that work in its entirety. The same exact information can also be found, along with Persephone's entire portfolio and book series, on her 18 and up websites about the author page. Persephone completed her BA in English Language, Literature, and Writing at Eastern Michigan University in 2016. She attended Manchester Metropolitan University from 2017 to 2018 for her master's in English Studies the Gothic, then completed her master's thesis on Metroidvania back in America, Lost in Necropolis. She independently researched her PhD, the thesis volume, Volume 0, from Sex Positivity, from December 2018 to July 2023, publishing it in October 2023. Apart from Gothic Communism, Persephone's PhD focuses a great deal on Metroidvania, i.e. as a therapeutic healing space vis-a-vis ludogothic BDSM, as well as expanding on Barbara Creed's 1993 notion of the monstrous feminine. If you click on that, so this is my diploma, just a photo of it when it arrived. Manchester Metropolitan University, that's my dead name, has been granted the award of Master of Arts, having followed an approved program in English Studies the Gothic, the 7th of December 2018. This award and associated transcript of studies is granted in accordance with the regulations for the academic awards of the university, signed by Vice Chancellor and Chairman of the Academic Board. And this is the opening page of my master's thesis, Lost in Necropolis, the continuation of castle narrative beyond the novel or cinema and into Metroidvania. A thesis submitted in partial fulfillment of the requirements of Manchester Metropolitan University for the MA degree, English Studies the Gothic, Department of English, Faculty of Arts and Humanities, September 2018. So I submitted it in September of 2018, and then I received my diploma in December. Oops, how do I close this? Okay. Persephone's work on Metroidvania. Persephone is a leading expert in Metroidvania, which has been her center of research since 2017. For a good summary of her work, refer to her postgrad research in the Mazes and Labyrinths abstract. Unlike survival horror, which saw regular publication in print by Japanese and American companies since the 1990s, Metroidvania wasn't used in mainstream sources until the mid-2010s, after the age of printed media had begun to die out. As such, it was largely ignored by academics when Persephone was at MMU, where she had access to the University Gothic and game departments, neither of which knew what Metroidvania was. Quote, I noticed these limitations myself when trying to mirror the Gothic to video games in my own graduate work as cutting edge. It was a tactic my supervisors and academic superiors resisted simply because video games were either totally outside of their realm of experience, or Metroidvania wasn't something that had been academically connected to games within their own fields. That is, speedrunning as a practice documentary subject was just taking off online in 2018, Twitch had only existed since 2011. Likewise, Little Gothic wasn't even a decade-old term at that time, was something that ambitious academics strove to stake new claims within while leaving much to be desired. Unquote. Likewise, Bernard Perron mentions survival horror tons, but completely ignores Metroidvania in his 2018 book, The World of Scary Video Games, a study in videoludic horror. Not one mention of it in over 400 pages. The same year I wrote my thesis on Metroidvania, Bernard Perron would sum up the broader Gothic rush in video game academia in The World of Scary Games, a study in videoludic horror, sans mentioning Metroidvania once. Not only does Perron make no mention of Metroidvania at all, neither do any of the other scholars he cites, nor did my supervisors know what Metroidvania were when I was researching it, nor I, with me finally settling on a concrete definition in 2021, re. The Mazes and Labyrinths abstract. Indeed, Metroidvania, despite being an older genre than survival horror, remains a thoroughly underrepresented area of Gothic video game studies, and Gothic video games remain ripe for continued study within our own lives. Indeed, I had to connect the two myself when recognizing a knowledge gap regarding Metroidvania within video game studies at large, and I have continued to do so as a postgrad writing about mazes and labyrinths in Metroidvania, i.e., as a niche area of study to expand upon within my own daily life beyond academia. By writing about or illustrating Metroidvania outside of conferences, but also interviewing Metroid speedrunners for fun in my Mazes and Labyrinths compendium. Unquote. Metroid and Castlevania are both older than Sweet Home, which was the inspiration for Resident Evil, according to Perron. I'm inclined to agree. And last, and perhaps least, Jeremy Parish, a bit of an archivist snob and intellectual vacuum, largely poo-pooed Metroidvania's value despite flirting with it in the early 2000s. All three cases really stuck in Persephone's craw, so she decided to dedicate her life's work to the genre. Take that, nerds! Also, people who separate video and game instead of simply saying video game are weird. Again, Persephone wrote her master's thesis on Metroidvania in 2018 and her independent PhD thesis volume in 2023, which dedicates largely to Metroidvania, and she's written about Metroidvania extensively since. Below are her definitions for Metroidvania, and further reading by her about Metroidvania before, during, and after writing her PhD, already quoted from her book series, Sex Positivity. Metroidvania definitions. Metroidvania has multiple definitions. Here, Persephone supplies the most important, chief among them being her own, of course. Metroidvania, a type of Gothic video game, one involving the exploration of castles and other closed spaces in an ergodic framework, i.e. the struggle of investigating past trauma as expressed through the Gothic castle and its monstrous caverns, which is the author poetically hinting at systemic abuses in real life. Scott Sharkey insists he coined the term, ostensibly in the early 2000s while working with Jeremy Parish for oneups.com. For the record, and probably for the last time, that was just a smart-ass way to refer to Symphony of the Night in particular, and later to differentiate the more Metroid-y Castlevanias in general. It's on me for using it in some indie game columns to refer to stuff like Knit and Cave Story, but Jeremy ran with it. End of story. I mean, yeah, it kind of sucks, probably on account of it wasn't supposed to be a broad genre descriptor in the first place, but sometimes shit sticks, and everything else sucks more. And now it's going to be relitigated every month until the sun burns out. You tweeted this on my birthday. Awesome. I know you hate the term, but I absolutely love it. I'm actually finishing my book on sex positivity and BDSM, monsters, etc., which includes my postgrad work on Metroidvania, inspired by your work and Jeremy Parish. Metroidvania lives on. However, the term was probably being used before that in the late 90s to casually describe the PS1 1997 game, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Records of it being used can be found as early as 2001, or of this Circle of the Moon Amazon review being from 2023 below. Metroidvania is great. Thumbs up for Castlevania Circle of the Moon. June 14th, 2021. Customer review 2023 for Harmony of Dissonance. The person who published that, Ed Oscuro, writes, "There's a Belmont in there somewhere. First there was Circle of the Moon, then there was Harmony of Dissonance. For those of you hoping that Aria would get away from the Castleroid or Metroidvania style of gameplay, you'll undoubtedly be annoyed that Aria once again uses a map system and items that must be picked up." By 2006, though, Jeremy Parish had a personalized definition on his own blog, GameSpite Compendium of Old and Useless Information, 2012. Metroidvania is a stupid word for a wonderful thing. It's basically a really terrible neologism that describes a video game genre which combines 2D side-scrolling action with free-roaming exploration and progressive skill and item collection to enable progress, as in Metroid and Koji Igarashi developed Castlevania games, thus the name. Unquote. In fact, it wasn't until the mid-2010s that Metroidvania saw wider use in the indie market. PC Gamer, Tom Singer's The Best Metroidvania Games on PC, and Gadget, Richard Mitchell's Metroidvania Should Actually Be Zeldafania, 2015. Game developer Christian Nuts, The Undying Allure of the Metroidvania, 2015. Giant Bomb, Search Action, 2024. And Wired, Bo Moores, an anime-inspired platformer, 2015. My own postgrad research, Mazes and Labyrinths, 2021, has narrowed the definition quite a bit. Quote, Metroidvania are a location-based video game genre that combines 2D, 2.5D, or 3D platforming, e.g. Dark Souls, and ranged melee combat, usually in the third person, inside a giant, closed space. This space communicates Gothic themes of various kinds, encourages exploration depending on how nonlinear the space is, includes progressive skill and item collection, mandatory boss keys, backtracking and variable gating mechanics, bosses, items, doors, and requires movement power-ups in some shape or form, while these can be supplied through RPG elements as an optional alternative. Exploration pertains to the deliberate navigation of space beyond that of obvious linear routes to search for objects, objectives, or secrets off the beaten path. Unquote. Also from Mazes and Labyrinths, quote, Mazes and Labyrinths, I treat space as essential when defining Metroidvania. Mazes and Labyrinths are closed space. Their contents exist within a closed structure, either a maze or a labyrinth. A classical labyrinth is a linear system with one set unicursorial path towards an endpoint. A maze is a nonlinear system with multiple paths to an endpoint. Classical texts often treated the words as interchangeable. Metroid etymology. At its most basic interpretation, Metroidvania is a portmanteau of Metroid and Castlevania, specifically Metroid plus Vania. However, the term has no singular, universally agreed upon definition. Because I focus on space, my definitions of the individual portmanteau components are as follows. Metroid doesn't equal the franchise Metroid. Metroid equals that franchise's unique treatment of closed space, the maze. Vania doesn't equal the franchise Castlevania. Castlevania equals that franchise's unique treatment of closed space, the labyrinth. At the same time, Metroid, or Metro plus Oid, means Android City. Castlevania or Castle plus Vania means Other Castle, Demon Castle, or Castle Dracula. The portmanteau Metroidvania kind of equals Android City plus Demon Castle plus Maze plus Labyrinth. Further distinctions. There are further ways to identify if a Metroidvania space is a maze or not, as I explain in my 2019 YouTube video, Metroidvania Series number 2, Mazes and Labyrinths. Quote, what ultimately determines a Metroidvania's mazeness are three sequences: the start, the middle, and the end. The start is what I consider to be the collection of essential items, power-ups you'll need to use for the entire game. Mid-game is the meat of the experience. The end sequence makes the win condition available to the player. I mention item collection relative to these sequences because they are a core element of Metroidvania play, hence determine what kind of space the player is dealing with. In Metroid, for example, the morph ball, bomb, and missiles are essential, and the player can acquire all of them rather quickly. Apart from those, however, there are a few items you actually need to complete the game. One of them is Ice Beam, which is required to kill Metroids, thus gaining access to Mother Brain, the game's end condition. Large portions of the game can be played without it, though. Like many Metroid power-ups, it is a mid-game collectible. Item collection allows the player to leave the start and enter the middle. This section, I argue, determines whether or not a Metroidvania is a maze. If the majority of the game allows for sequence breaks, RBO, reverse boss order, and low percent, then it is a maze. If not, it is a labyrinth. A Metroidvania can be either. Unquote. In terms of appearance, a Metroidvania's audiovisual presentation can range from retro-future sci-fi to neo-Gothic fantasy. Nevertheless, their space typically functions as Gothic castle, replete with hauntological monsters, demons, and ghosts. They guide whatever action the hero must perform when navigating the world and dealing with its threats. The Metroidvania spectrum. Apart from newer games, my definition also highlights the spectrum actualized and inhabited by older titles over the past 30-odd years: Castlevania, Castlevania-style, cross-franchise hybrids, Metroid-style, and Metroid. The extreme poles are represented by either parent franchise. These franchises appeared in 1986 and introduced a signature space to video games. Metroid space equals nonlinear, multi-directional mazes with chimeric boss keys. Castlevania space, linear, single-direction labyrinths with singular end-stage boss gates. More towards the middle, you have franchise sequels or spiritual successors whose space behaves similarly to either parent franchise. Castlevania-style Metroidvania, which borrows spatially from Castlevania. Metroid-style Metroidvania, which borrows spatially from Metroid. Cross-franchise hybrids, which borrow spatially from both parents. Since 1986, video game mazes and labyrinths have generally become associated with monsters and locational phobias, re liberial, isolation, exposure. Mazes and labyrinths are structurally fundamental. Metroidvania developers can draw upon them and their supernatural inhabitants without pointedly referencing Metroid or Castlevania. You'll know it when you see it. You might even call it something else. Unquote. Further reading by Persephone on Metroidvania. Persephone's research into Metroidvania includes interviewing speedrunners, game designers, film directors. It extends and applies to her casual writing about sex, heavy metal, video games, and horror media, and it includes her personal artwork and sex work, as well as collaborations with other models and activists. Here is some further reading about Metroidvania, taken from Persephone's body of work that you might find fun, re quoted from the Sex Positivity Glossary, hence the switch to first person. Metroidvania as closed space. In the past, my academic, postgraduate work has thoroughly examined the Metroidvania ludonarrative, including speedruns, as a closed, parallel, or Gothic space. While my critical voice has changed considerably since 2018, I want to show the evolution of my work, gender identity leading into sex positivity's genesis, by listing my entire Metroidvania corpus, not including my entire book volumes, but citing some salient essays from those books. Anything from 2023 onwards I'm perfectly proud of, but everything before 2023 is still important. Though imperfect, these older pieces try to show how the post-structuralist method, when taken beyond its somewhat limited 1960s-70s praxial scope, the 70s being the emergence of academic Gothic thought, can be critically empowered in dialectical material ways, i.e. to actually critique capital through iconoclastic monsters, BDSM, power exchange, and spaces in Metroidvania, but also immensely creative interpretations responses to those variables as already existing for me to rediscover in my own work. Speedrunning is a communal effect for solving complex puzzles and telling Gothic ludonarratives in highly inventive ways. As we'll see moving forward, this strategy isn't just limited to video games, but applies to any poetic endeavor during oppositional praxis. My master's thesis, which studies the ways in which speedrunners create castle narrative through recursive motion inside the Metroidvania as a Gothic chronotope, Lost in Necropolis, the continuation of castle narrative behind the novel or cinema and into Metroidvania. A YouTube video summarizing Metroidvania and its spatial qualities, sort of a precursor to the 2021 Mazes and Labyrinths abstract, Metroidvania Series No. 2, Mazes and Labyrinths, accompanied by its original script, on Google Docs, both 2019. A BDSM reflection on Ludo-Gothic themes in Metroid, revisiting my master's thesis on Metroidvania, Our Ludic Masters, The Dominating Game Space, from 2021. A deeper follow-up to Our Ludic Masters, Why I Submit, A Sub-Gothicist's Attitudes on Metroidvania, Mommy-Doms, and Sexual Persecution, 2021. A study of abjection and traditional gender theory vis-a-vis Barbara Creed in Metroidvania, War Vaginas, Phallic Women, Vaginal Spaces, and Archaic Mothers in Metroid, 2021. A Q&A interview series that interviews Metroid speedrunners about Metroidvania for my postgrad work, The Abstract for Mazes and Labyrinths, Disempowerment in Metroidvania and Survival Horror, 2021. A chapter I wrote about Metroid for an unfinished book, The Promethean Quest, and James Cameron's Military Optimism in Metroid, 2021. A chapter on Metroidvania for my PhD, aka Volume 0 of Sex Positivity, which details extensively my history with Metroidvania from childhood to my graduate and postgraduate work, Make It Gay Part 2, Camping Tolkien's Refrain using Metroidvania, or The Map is a Lie, The Quest for Power Inside Cameron's Closed Space, and Other Shooters, 2023, an essay from Volume 2, Part 1, which conceptualizes the middle class's constant inheritance and exploring of the imaginary past through a privileged savior position, but one that can develop little Gothic BDSM as a sex-positive force, features Samus Aran as a white Indian, in search of the secret spell, digging our own graves, or playing with dead things, the imaginary past, as verboten in Carte Blanche, featuring Samus Aran, an essay from Volume 2, Part 1, which critiques Jeremy Parish as a Metroidvania research inspiration of mine, Monsters, Magic, and Myth, Modularity and Class, featuring Jeremy Parish and Circa Nalan, 2024, an essay from Volume 2, Part 1, which reflects on how the Gothic is queer and realized through my Metroidvania work and beyond, Facing Death, What I Learned Mastering Metroidvania, Thus the Abject 90s, 2024, a three-part book chapter on Metroidvania from Volume 2, Part 2, which covers Frankenstein, aka the modern Prometheus, and talks extensively about the Promethean Quest as it appears in popular media after Shelley's novel, Metroidvania, of course, with close reads of Hollow Knight and Axiom Verge, but also movies like Forbidden Planet and Alien, She Fucks Back, or revisiting the modern Prometheus through Astronoetics, The Man of Reason and Cartesian Hubris versus the Womb of Nature in Metroidvania, 2024. Subchapter combines my PhD research after writing my PhD, making She Fucks Back a culmination of my life's work on the subject. I'm very proud of it. Last but not least, I wanted to share my favorite essay about Metroidvania, already the culmination of my life's work. I wanted to cap off my magnum opus, RA She Fucks Back, with a fun little announcement letting you all know the last part of the chapter is now on my website, Sleeping Beauties, Policing the Horror, or Topping from Below to Rise from the Ashes, 2024. Normally, it'd just be another post in my book sample series for Volume 2, Part 2, Searching for Secrets. However, Sleeping Beauties is extra special because it's the capstone to my Metroidvania work after my PhD and what I assume to be my crowning achievement, i.e. I write about rape play a great deal, talking about it outside of Metroidvania all the time, e.g. Into the Toy Chest Part 0, a note about rape, rape play, or Facing the Great Destroyer, 2024. But Beauties complements that work by marrying it to one of my favorite games, Hollow Knight, and its secret final boss, the Radiance. There's just so much fun academic stuff to unpack, e.g. Manuel Aguirre, Michel Foucault, and Mikhail Bakhtin, to name a few, with me doing so in a way that's hopefully more accessible, sexy, and fun than those authors to read. To summarize the piece itself, my website describes it as articulates Aguirre and Bakhtin's ideas for my evolution of Little Gothic BDSM after my master's thesis and into my graduate work, then considers the Promethean Quest as something that presents the horror as normally hunted by police forces only to escape their subjugation and imprisonment by acting out her own rape, i.e. as Hollow Knight's final boss, the Radiance, does. In short, girl's a freak, but camps her abuse at the hero's hands to say something not just about the Pale King, but capitalism too, and why it sucks. Maybe in reading Beauties, you'll change how you view not just the game and its approach to sexual violence in Gothic forms, but also the world at large. In any event, it's a huge relief to have Beauties out there, and I'm very proud of it. Give it a look and let me know what you think. So yeah, there's a lot. I would love to go into these and read them one at a time, but I'll save that for another video. Basically, what I'll be doing is I'll be making a series, basically a continuation of a past series where this video will be followed up by other videos where I go through each of these citations and I explore those more at length. So yeah, I think that'll be a fun thing to do. But in any event, yeah, this is sort of an encapsulation of my work from my master's to PhD and beyond, because some of these essays that I'm citing, for instance, were written in 2024, whereas I wrote my PhD in 2023. So yeah, it's an ongoing thing. It's a process, and I look forward to that. But also, if any Metroidvania fans are out there who want to talk to me about this, and just if you have thoughts, criticisms, ideas, suggestions, things you'd like me to talk about, I'm all ears. I love talking about Metroidvania, and if you have an idea that's fun enough, I'm going to have a lot of free time after finishing my book series. So if you give me a cool idea, I'll write it down, and maybe I'll talk about it after I'm done doing that. So in any event, if you like this and you want to hear more, like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, thanks for watching. Take care.